In the past, we've referred to this address as the Alternative State of the Nation, or ASONA. But I feel this name does not accurately describe the difference between this summation of where we stand as a nation and the one you will no doubt hear from President Ramaphosa in a few days' time. This here is a truthful assessment of what went wrong, where we now stand, what our realistic prospects for the future are, and what we can do to improve this outlook. It's not a sugar-coated version. It's not vague rhetoric or spin to conceal the harsh truth. No lies to cover up wrongdoing. Just the facts. Which is why we're calling this address the true state of the nation. Because now, more than ever, we need an honest assessment of the state of our nation. And you will certainly not get this from the President on the 11th of February. He will underplay our economic crisis. He will overplay government's COVID response. And he will continue to outright lie about our vaccine plan. The hard truth is that we are a nation in crisis on three fronts. Firstly, we're in a COVID crisis, from which the only way out is the immediate rollout of a massive vaccination program. Secondly, we're in an economic crisis, and here the only way out is a raft of urgent, bold and brave economic reforms. And thirdly, we're in a crisis of democracy, as the recent shocking testimony at the Zondo Commission has revealed. And the only immediate way out of this crisis, if we're brutally honest, is for our government to resign in shame. However, we can say with near certainty that none of these three things is going to happen right away. While we're still waiting for a full detailed vaccination plan from the President, we do know that we won't have nearly enough vaccines in time to prevent a third and possibly a fourth wave of the virus from running through our country. This leaves the prospect of further lockdowns looming over our already shattered economy. That will most certainly bring on a sovereign debt crisis, along with another wave of job losses and extraordinary human suffering and deprivation. We know that almost everything the President said about his government's efforts to procure vaccines has been a distortion of the truth, to create the impression that they've been busy for the past 6 months, while in reality, they only woke up in January. We already knew this from statements made by the vaccine suppliers themselves, but this was confirmed in a letter from the Department of Health to Treasury, in which it requested a deviation from the normal procurement procedures in order to acquire vaccines. That letter was only sent on the 7th of January this year. When the President spoke in his televised address about the arrival of the various different vaccines, he deliberately kept the details vague by simply stating when the delivery of each vaccine was expected to commence. What he didn't tell us is how many of these vaccines would arrive on these commencement dates. However, those details were contained in a presentation made by the Health Minister to Cabinet, which shows very clearly that the bulk of these vaccines will only be arriving in October, November, and December this year, with some even only getting here next year. So, when the President tells us of plans to vaccinate 2/3 of the population by the end of the year, even if we could launch a program that could target in excess of 100,000 vaccine shots a day, we simply won't have the vaccines to cover even half of that target. Now, this is not because all those other big bad countries hoarded the vaccines so we couldn't buy them, as President Ramaphosa tried to spin when speaking to the World Economic Forum crowd. It's because we were simply nowhere when they were all queuing back in May, June, and July 2020. The failure to procure vaccines when they were available to us, and the failure to publish a detailed and transparent rollout plan are a violation of government's constitutional obligations. We have asked the High Court to compel government to make public all their dealings with vaccine suppliers, as well as their rollout plan, as they had to do 20 years ago when the Treatment Action Campaign took them to court to get clarity on the antiretroviral plan. It is critical that we get our country's vaccination program on track as soon as we can. We now have an enormous amount of lost ground to make up, some other countries will be looking to wrap up their vaccination programs as South Africa is only getting started. We don't have a choice but to try and make up this ground because we have no time to waste in opening up our economy so that we can start to reverse our massive job losses. That brings me to the other big story that has been dominating our news cycle. The crisis in our democracy brought about by the bombshell testimony at the Zondo Commission. In a properly functioning democracy, this would have prompted the resignation of a government. Using taxpayer funds to secretly pay for propaganda news reporting, to sway the judiciary, to destabilize the government of the opposition, and to carry on enriching the disgraced former president is a scandal so large that for any government other than the ANC, it would have spelled the end. Even the National Party government of B.J. Vorster back in the 1970s was forced into shameful resignations when they were exposed for having run an almost identical state-funded propaganda program. Even the morally bankrupt Richard Nixon stepped down in disgrace after the Watergate scandal. And just last month, the entire government of the Netherlands resigned in disgrace in the wake of a child welfare scandal that saw thousands of families wrongly accused of welfare fraud. That's what it looks like when the weight of shame makes your position in government untenable. It is inconceivable that, in a functioning democracy, a governing party that has been exposed for doing what the ANC has done would remain in office.